Hello, everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity. As I always say, you know that we love the blues here at Boomerocity, and it's always a thrill for me to be able to chat with someone from that genre. And I've interviewed quite a few artists from that genre. One who I've been itching to talk to, and it took some fixing to get it to happen because we've had scheduling mix-ups and tough time getting coordinated, and then we had technical snafus, but we finally arranged a phone conversation, at least on Joanne's side of the call, with Joanna Shaw Taylor. If you haven't already heard about her, please check her out, and especially with this new single she has coming out called Sweet Little Lies. But I finally got to talk to her. She's a wonderful artist, a wonderful woman, a wonderful human being. And I think you'll agree with me when you listen to her music as well as to this interview that she is going to be one of the stalwarts of the blues genre. So please give this interview a close listen to, share it with your friends. And if you don't mind, it won't cost you a dime, but if you don't mind, please subscribe to whatever platform you're listening to, our channel on it at least, whether it's YouTube, Star Worldwide Networks, or any of the podcast platforms. Please subscribe to Boomerocity. And if you would, just hit a like on there as well. And please let your friends know about us, because that's how we progress in this new world of transmitting news to you. So without any further ado, here is my first of what I hope are many more interviews with the outstanding Joanna Shaw Taylor. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care.
Hello?
Hello. This must be...
Hey! I'm sorry about that. I'm having a bad run of luck with venue Wi-Fi. It's been hard to get on a Zoom video.
I totally understand. I've run into that a few times myself. So you're not alone in this world when it comes to those kinds of things. So, Joanne,
Thank you for that. I was starting to feel like I am.
Yeah, well, you're not, trust me. But hey, I appreciate you taking the time and the multiple efforts for us to get together. It's a pleasure. I've been a fan of yours for a while now, and I got to tell you, the song that won me over with you was "I've Been Loving You Too Long." Once I heard that, I was a fan for life. So I just absolutely love it. It's one of my go-tos when I plug you to my friends and readers and such. So it's a pleasure to finally get to meet the singer behind that song.
Really lovely to hear. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So before we get to about this new single and such, I wanted to ask you how, and I've been asking artists this for a while now because I'm just curious from the music business and in your career, how has the post-pandemic world been for you? I know that everybody's kind of a little bit different about it, that some there's been major changes of how they conduct their tours and do business now, and others it's like, man, they're jumping back in and it's just like old times. How is it for you?
Firstly, the pandemic, it's the way I'm going to say this sounds terrible, but the pandemic was really good for me in terms of two things. One, I was completely burned out, and having that time off to get in a better mental headspace and physical headspace, and really get back to enjoying music as a fan, and just having the time to sit there and play guitar for fun. So when I did finally get back out on the road, I've just been so thankful that, there's still music venues here and people are still coming out, and I, still get to, one, keep a roof over my head, but more importantly, get to do something I absolutely love to do for a living. So it's just been a really, really nice thing to get back to, and it's just been lovely to see that kind of camaraderie from the fans as well, being back out in venues, and I think they missed it too.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not a musician. I barely play a good air guitar, but I can imagine. But first of all, as a fan, I know for me, I have a better appreciation of live music. Before the pandemic, I was getting kind of jaded, especially from my perspective, getting to go to a lot of shows and meet a lot of, your fellow artists. Now I'm kind of like, wow, I feel privileged to be able to catch a good concert now. And I'm wondering if you're sensing that from fans, as well as how does it change your perspective and your attitude about performing?
I think the same, really. Again, as you just said, I was pretty jaded from being on the road nonstop for 13 years and, lost my mother in that. And if I'm honest, I think, I was very burned out. My label at the time had said they wanted me to take 6 months off. And then, that's when the pandemic hit. So I got a lot longer off. So I think it really helped me because I was getting to the point where I sort of resented touring, and it
Mhm.
kind of ruined music for me because it was, this thing I had to keep doing just to kind of survive. So again, same thing. It kind of gave me a fresh perspective and just realized how lucky we are to have it. I mean, thank God. Can you imagine a world without music, let alone live music? So it's just, again, just very thankful.
Well, good deal. I'm and I, as a fan and I guess quote unquote journalist, I really don't consider myself one, but I just
I don't really consider myself a musician. Don't worry.
well, there you
We're all
go.
faking it the best we can.
That's right. That's right. We just rise to our best levels, I guess. But I just for one, I being a bit of an empath, I look at you and your peers and just I have a little more insight as to what you guys are going through, maybe more so than the typical fan. I know I'm
Mm.
not alone in this insight, but knowing what you guys have to do just to get on stage and entertain us for a couple of hours, I, for one, appreciate it and just want to tell you that and appreciate, I wish I discovered you a lot sooner than I did. But since I've discovered you, I so appreciate all the music that you've put out there for us, and hearing your side of things pre-pandemic, I have even a better appreciation for it. So thank you for your
Aw.
sacrifice on that, and hopefully moving forward, you won't burn yourself out. You can keep a good pace and stay healthier about it. So
Oh,
there,
thank you. And you know what? That's lovely to hear. And quite a few fans have said that since the pandemic. So I think the biggest change is not going out to do meet and greets, which I actually stopped doing about 2 years before the pandemic. And reason being was that I've got a pre-existing lung condition, and if I get a cold, I had whooping cough as a kid, and it comes back. It scarred my lungs. So obviously, if I get a cold, the tour's cancelled. And so I do think it gave people an appreciation of maybe after a show going and shaking 20 to 80 hands is a really bad idea if I
yeah,
want to not catch something.
yeah.
Um, and people now after the pandemic have been really cool about that. Like, yeah, you look after yourself. And so that kind of support's really lovely too.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, man, I love this new single of yours. Tell me about it. What's the story behind it? How did you put it together? And that kind of thing.
Well, it was the first song I wrote for the new album that's coming out next year, Heavy Soul. And it was interesting because the previous album I'd just done, Nobody's Fall, was kind of a bit of a departure for me because we'd done the blues album and then we did a live version of it. So I
Mhm.
sort of felt like I'd done two very quite traditional blues albums for me. So writing Nobody's Fall, I kind of thought, you know what, I can just kind of write whatever I want to and just kind of stretch myself and see where I can go and have some fun with it and kind of sneak out an album that maybe I wouldn't usually do.
Mhm.
Um, so it was when I sat down to write this, I kind of wanted this album to be the bridge back to the blues. Like, how do I go from that kind of poppy soul album back into what I usually do? So I really wanted to write kind of a blues pop song, I suppose. And I decided actually to write it on piano. I sat down and after so many years of writing on guitar, sometimes you kind of get a bit repetitive and stuck in your ways. So it was kind of interesting to sit down at a piano, which I don't play very well at all, but kind of opened me up to new melodies. And yeah, it was just a really fun one to write. And I had that piano melody, and then I had sweet little lines stuck in my head, and annoyingly so, which usually is a good sign that it's going to be catchy.
Well, if I remember right now, I'm a little behind on my notes here because when I first wrote them, I had everything fresh, and I've been running and gunning like you are. But as I recall, you had quite a stellar band behind you on this, or as far as guests and friends as part of this song. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a stellar lineup. It was Anton Fig from
Hmm.
Joe Bonamassa and Letterman for years on drums, Alison Crestwood on bass, Rob McNally on guitar, Jimmy Wallace, who's joined me before, on keys, and of course Mr. Kevin Shirley being the dictator behind all of it. So yeah, and people I've known for some time now, particularly Anton and Kevin and Rob, who worked with me on a previous album. So just, yeah, it's again very lovely to be able to count, talent like that that wants to lend it themselves to me, but also, dear friends, which is a wonderful thing.
For me, as a fan and a person that gets to talk to people like you, and then I get my car and I start channel surfing through Sirius XM, or do random shuffles on my iPhone on listening to music. For me, it's kind of like, wow, I got to talk to that person. I got to talk to that person. For you, being able, I mean, first of all, you're top shelf talent yourself, so that that this is not to discount where your position is in the overall scheme of things. But I can only imagine what it feels like to be, working on a song, and there's Anton, there's all these people. I mean, you're friends with Bonamassa, who, by the way, I talked to back on Monday, and his interview will come out after his first year in support of his stop here in Knoxville. But does it kind of, do you still kind of pinch yourself with the circles you get to kind of work with and flow in and out of,
Oh yeah.
all that kind of stuff?
I mean, less so with Joe, and there were some people that I kind of felt like I kind of came up with, like Sam Fish was, on the same record label as me, and we kind of started working at the same time. So, we were like at the same level. Um, and on one hand, it's really, really nice to see them doing so well, because I know how hard they've worked because I was there with them doing it.
Yep.
And then on the other hand, you've got people that were already, successful before, I came along and maybe even influenced me, that I now can count as friends. And that it is nice to reflect and kind of go, good for that 13-year-old girl that was determined to do it and live in America. And, I'm really proud of her for, being that resilient and doing, fulfilling her dreams, really, I suppose. So, no, it's definitely humbling.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Now you said this song obviously is part of an upcoming album. I imagine that album is pretty close to being in the can and in the process of, being finalized and ready for release.
I believe so. I believe my work on it is done. I hope.
At least you hope so, right? So,
Yeah.
so I don't want to get too far ahead on it, because I'd love to interview you again about the album itself, but maybe as a precursor to it, how was this album different for you to put together compared to your other work?
I mean, like anytime I do an album, I always say all you can do is write the best songs you can write at that time and take the best songs and record them,
Mm-hmm.
Don't try and fit into a mold and say, what, actually I need 4 blues songs and 2 pop songs. And, if they're not the best songs, you're not going to have the best album. So just go with the best songs. Unfortunately, sometimes songwriting is, it's something that can't be controlled, whatever songs come. So I always, just try and write the best songs I can. But with this as well, it was a nice challenge, as I said, to think of it being kind of a bridge album back into the blues. When I look back on my life, I want all these albums to sound different, but I want them to all sound like the same artist.
Right.
And for me, Nobody's Fool is, a snapshot of the year of 2022 and what was going on then. It's kind of like a document of my life, really. So, again, the job for me is to try and tie it in. So that was the biggest challenge. But it was also fun because I recruited quite a few people to co-write with. My guitar player, Joey, and dear friend Colin Vandenberg, Beth Nielsen Chapman. So it was kind of a little less stressful for, reaching out to some great talent and going, hey, I got this song, can't think of a verse, do you fancy finishing it for me? So it's kind of a combination effort.
I see. Well, you, Joe, Sam Fish, as you mentioned, several others. To me, I see kind of a 2-tier blues structure here as a fan. Again, I'd be curious to see if you agree and what you would change about my perspective of it. And that's this: there's the 2 tiers. There's, we've got the older ones, much older ones, who are kind of dying off, and it leaves this 2 tiers. So there's the ones that you said have been established for a little while. I mean, Joe's been at it for a bit and, doing quite well. And, there are some others that are doing it. And then there's those that are, establishing a pretty good beachhead, such as yourself, Sam Fish, others. How do you, from your perspective, as this rising influencer in the blues, how do you view the state of the blues? As a fan, I see it as enjoying a renewed appreciation and resurgence. I mean, the blues is always there. I mean, it's the underlying thing to rock and roll and all that. But for me as a fan, it seems like there's a much more of an appreciation for it, and for artists such as yourself and the predecessors to you. And I see it as becoming much more. It's an easier way for you guys to make a living. Let's put it bluntly. Do you resonate with that? Do you agree with that, or do you see it a little bit differently?
No, I think that's pretty accurate understanding of it. I mean, as you said, the blues is always there. I think I've always thought that every now and again, one artist kind of breaks through into the mainstream every, once a decade, that kind of gets it a bit more mainstream radio play, whether that's been the Rolling Stones or Stevie Ray Vaughan or maybe John Mayer more recently, and Joe certainly. That kind of like refreshes it again. So I think it's always going to be there. I think the blues genre and being a blues musician, which, I think I'm blues plus pop and soul and rock. But, I always say I approach music from a blues musician point of view, with the blues feeling. The good thing is there's a live audience. It's something that is always better live, and it always seems to have that support, which is, thank God for the fans who really are so passionate about it and will go out every time to see you because they want you to continue and they want to, keep supporting you. So there's always a, work there, as opposed to, having a hit single and, lasting maybe a year on the radio and then disappearing. So yeah, I think it's still strong, and I think I'm wondering who the next one's going to be to break through. I'm sure there'll be some good-looking kid that plays a mean guitar and bumps their bar sales for a little bit.
I'm curious about something. It seemed, from the beginning of rock and roll until now, from this side of the pond, I've always been amused at how the UK and the blues just kind of glob onto each other. I've never asked anyone this before, and from your perspective, what is it about the blues that Brits love? What is it that just turns them on? Because I mean, as a stateside kid, I've loved it ever since I heard my first Elvis 45, and it just kind of made my little 5-year-old butt dance, But from somebody that, born in the UK and all that kind of thing, how do you see it? What is it about the blues that resonates in the UK?
It's interesting. I mean, I think a large part of it is that there's always been this sort of admiration between the UK and the US. Like we've always thought, your cars are cool and the food and, as you said, Elvis Presley. And likewise, I think you guys, the amount of people who ask me about the Queen or Liverpool and the Beatles and, I think there's an attraction on both sides. So I think that's partly it, I think just the feeling. I think also it's always important to remember that there's a particular history behind the blues. That this genre of music wouldn't exist if it had not been for the suppression of a whole race of people. Yeah. And we're history buffs in the UK, and we don't have that history, obviously. So it would be hard for us to create something like that, or certainly, we ended slavery way before you guys did. So
right.
I think we just couldn't have created that kind of music. We didn't have the instruments and stuff. So I think that's partly it as well. The preservation of the history of why this genre exists. And paying respect to those people and what it came from. If that makes sense.
It does, absolutely. Shifting gears just a little bit, because you've had the fight harder in this new music business, as I'll call it, compared to the way it used to be in the 70s, 80s, around in there, things started really changing. If you were made music czar, what do you think the music business is broken? And if so, what would you do to fix it?
That's a tough one. I mean, I think the problem is a lot of people, and I don't mean the fans of music, I don't mean music fans, but a lot of people still don't value art. I think, there's a big problem with paying artists for what they've created in the same way that, if a plumber comes to fix a pipe, you pay him,
Right.
um, because we can't. I mean, I can stay home and, get a job and I'll maybe, write a song a year and no one will ever hear it. But, for me to create the art that hopefully people enjoy, I do need to get paid for it to, sustain myself. So, I mean, the streaming thing is really a big issue. And I think they're going to start to tackle it, hopefully, because you just don't make any money from that. And again, I'm very fortunate that I'm in a genre that has a live, audience. If I was more into, I don't know, electronic music or something, it might be a lot more difficult. So unfortunately, I think that needs to be addressed. I think that's probably the biggest change I would make.
I think that for me, this just kind of hit me recently. I always felt like there was the software, and especially now with AI and all that, that everything's in place to be able to do a fair, dynamic royalty payout to everybody involved. And the example I've given to people, I want to get your opinion of it. All right, I subscribe to Apple Music, okay? And so
Mm-hmm.
let's say 1 month I'm listening to just you. And
Mm-hmm.
I listened, I'm on a Joanne binge for the whole month of October. So at the end of, in November, you get a check that in some way, shape, or form reflects that Randy Patterson spent his whole whatever I'm paying for Apple Music now. I forget what it is. Let's just say $15. And
Mm-hmm.
whatever portion that Apple doesn't keep and gets divvied up, you would get the equivalent of what used to be the record sales royalty and a combination of it and what used to be paid from the radio stations. So it was a nice blend of those two things. And it's like, well, gosh, Randy did nothing but listen to Joanna Shaw Taylor. And she's going to get she and the label and whoever else has got their hands in your till there get
Mm-hmm.
100% of that portion of the money. The next month, I might be phasing out and listen to half you and half, I don't know, Joe, for instance, just to keep it in your group of friends. So then that gets divvied out, and the software is there to automatically figure that out and get you paid quickly. I don't see what the difficulty is. And Apple, of all people, Spotify, all those guys can do this. The labels can participate in this. They know what's going on. To me, it should be that simple. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, of course. But, you're forgetting that if people are making money off something, they're not going to give that money away,
Well, true.
Um,
There's
you
that.
know. So unfortunately, it's hard, but I'm with you. I'll petition with you. I'll hold up the, I'll
Well,
create the pick
let's lay
art.
that charge then. All right. So what you've got this single coming out, you got the album coming out next year. What's on your radar in addition to those two things for the next, say, 6 to 12 months?
Putting up my Harry Potter Christmas tree and binge watching Harry Potter with my dog and having a real break. I told you I have to look after my mental health.
There you go.
No, I'm continuing writing. We've got obviously a lot of touring coming up. I'm looking forward to the holidays. I got some friends coming in for Christmas. Getting over to the UK early next year, so I'll probably tag on a week to see family. So just lots of lovely, lovely things, making music and seeing all the beautiful people who I'm fortunate enough love me.
Very good. Very good. One last question for you, and I hope I get to interview you a lot more in the coming years because, like I said, I'm a raving fan of yours. Love your work. I want to do my little part to support you and to help generate new fans. So this won't be the last interview, hopefully, but maybe every other time I'll ask you this question just to get a read on where you're at in the overall scheme of
You're
things.
making me nervous.
Oh, no, don't be nervous. You can always refuse to answer. So, and I've asked this of everybody. It's not meant to be a dark question either. But when you step off of that tour bus of life up at the Great Gig in the Sky, to borrow a phrase from Pink Floyd, how do you hope to be remembered, and what do you hope your legacy is?
Oh, oh, I mean, it's hard to answer that question without sounding obnoxious, but I would hope my legacy was one. I hope I'm remembered as a nice person that people miss. That would mean a great deal to me. And I hope I did a little bit of good in helping women come forward, particularly female guitar players. Hopefully the next lot of female guitar players won't be referred to as female guitar players. They'll just be guitar players. And hopefully I had a hand in that. That would be a nice little legacy.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing a great job on that, Joanne. And I can't thank you enough for taking this time to chat with me. And next time, maybe we'll get to look at each other virtually, face to face, over the
old-fashioned way.
That's right, the old-fashioned way, Zoom. But and I hope that you get near my neck of the woods. I'm over in East Tennessee. Are you living in Nashville, by the way?
I am, yeah. I've been there since last year.
Oh, okay, cool. I was there for about 9 months before the pandemic, and then home base has been Sevierville, Tennessee, over in the Smokies for the last 10 years. So that's where I'm dialing in from. So, I love it. Absolutely love it. So hopefully you'll be playing somewhere this neck of the woods, or I can get over your way and away from you, since there's no meat and grease. I wouldn't want to run the risk of making you sick. So, but it'd be a pleasure to catch you in concert and maybe meet at some point. And but if in the meantime, I hope that we can talk when the album comes out. And if there's anything else I can do to help support you, Joanne, please let me know, and we'll get one of these set up. And I'll do my small part to get the word out.
Thank you, my love. Well, thank you. And I look forward to that. And in the meantime, you be well and be happy. And I'll see you on the road.
All right. Sounds good. Take care. Stay safe.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, love. Bye-bye. Bye.